Hey guys, it's Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we're going to talk about what I've learned over the last 30 years of training. Now, some of these things you may not have heard of, but one of them is being consistent. The other ones is there's no secrets, and technique should always be the most important thing. So let's get to it.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a f, that's what they don't understand. I'm back again like flu season. I broke records while loose leafing. I'm coming down my roof, leaving. Don't give a f, I don't care. Did the by my lonesome. No wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run. All I really want is my share.
The first thing that I think we have to learn is that most people can't be experts at anything unless they put at least, I would say, 15 to 25 years of experience into something. The reason is that, especially dealing with the human body, there are so many factors in order to understand and have at least a grasp on in order for you to get good. Let's go over some. 1, endocrine system, right? Hormones. 2, skeletal muscular system, ligaments, tendons, bones, muscles, right? When most of us, all we think about is muscle tissue. Health, right? It's awesome to be strong, but if you're doing it in an unhealthy way, i.e. gaining 50 pounds of fat, it's not going to really be super conducive. I've fallen into all of these traps for short periods of time, and I'm sure almost everyone has. But I'm going to give you guys some big examples of what I used and what I learned in the last 30 years. 1, being consistent trumps everything. You have to understand one thing. People that get super strong usually last a long time in the game. This means that staying away from injuries, increasing the amount of workload that you can do over time, and keeping intensity at the right level for whatever your body can heal from. That's also why I'm not a huge fan of doing ultra max effort work, meaning anything really above 92%, unless you're competing. Why? You really don't make any other progress after about 92%. You're just doing more damage than good unless you're a competitor. I would say that most of the people watching this want to be strong for various reasons, and competition might only be 10 to 15% of the audience. So with that being said, what we have to understand is that consistency trumps everything. Let's put this into perspective. If I have lifter A goes as hard as he can go on the squats on Monday and then can't do another workout by Thursday or Friday, is he better than the guy that can do 2 very consistent workouts Monday and Thursday or Friday? Meaning that the guy that goes a little less hard can train twice a week, and the guy that goes balls to the wall can only train once a week. In my opinion, over a couple of years' time, the guy that can train at a consistent basis twice a week will make more progress than the person training once a week. Now, there is a tipping point to that, meaning that this stuff you see about squatting every day or bench press, squat, deadlift 3-4 times a week, that also is going to be a tipping point of back to the wrong direction, meaning there is an optimal amount of things that you can train in 1 week, especially when you're talking about one muscle group. What does that mean? That means that usually muscle groups can only withstand extreme stimulation every 72 hours, every 3 days. So that means that if your training is optimal, you should be able to squat and then 3 days later be able to squat again. Now, if your training program is got you too beat up or it's too easy to where you feel you can do it 4 or 5 times a week, we have a big training problem. So I suggest getting on winningstrength.com and getting some manuals. The next big thing I think you have to understand, and this is point B, is that great lifters don't have secret programs. They have different mindsets. I have seen world-class lifters that have the shittiest program you ever possibly could imagine, and I've seen guys that have the most skilled program you've ever seen, and they're not strong. There's something in the middle, and it has to do with mindset. For example, when I'm training, everything is calculated. I know exactly how many pounds of squats or bench press or deadlifts that I have to do in that day. I know where my weaknesses are, and I know how to attack them and rotate movements constantly. But at the end of the day, when I go to a contest or I'm going to try to break a PR, all of that goes out the window, and now it's time to grind my ass off. So what can happen is that you have almost 2 sides of the spectrum. You got 100% style meatheads that don't have any consistency or any idea of how to train, And then on the other end, you got guys that are so cognitive they have no intensity. There has to be a middle ground, meaning that most people that I know, when it's time to get to work to break a PR, they mentally force the PR whether the training allows it or not. I know that sounds kind of like a odd statement, but at the end of the day, some people are just competitors and other people are not. So no matter how good your training program is, if you don't have that switch to turn on, it's going to be very, very hard to not only break PRs, but be world class at nearly anything. You have to have that switch. Now, because I started at such a young age, I don't know if I developed the switch or I already had it. But at the end of the day, I think that having that switch and being able to transfer over past your training and go to that deep point of where most people can't get to is a huge proponent of getting better once you get really good. The last thing that I think that most people don't understand, and I didn't learn until about year 20 of training, is that technique should always be more important than numbers. So what does this mean? This means that I don't know how many times we get on Instagram or Facebook and we get on these different group chats and people post a 500-pound squat and their knee is 8 inches over their toe, they're barely breaking parallel, their back's rounding over, and they're worried about maxing. Well, I'd be worried about form, because at the end of the day, if that person had better form, they'd probably be squatting 600 or 700 pounds. The point is that when you guys are training, you have to understand that usually something that looks perfect ends up moving more weight than something that looks off. So don't replace intensity for technique. You'll never win that battle. And in the long term, you really will probably create more injuries than performance. The problem is that we all think that what we did as a beginner or an intermediate lifter will advance us into the higher levels of training. And in reality, we're never in the same pond twice. If you'd like to understand a little bit more of this, we're going to release a bench press manual that's going to show you examples of beginner programs for 12 weeks, intermediate programs for 12 weeks, and advanced programs for 12 weeks, so that you can see what we have learned in the last 30 years of not only how to train beginners, intermediate, and advanced, but the progression of what it takes to get better. Hope to see you guys soon on winningstrength.com, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss.